Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. It's titled Proper Substrate Prep, not just for those other floors coverings anymore. I'm Jim Olson with the National Tile Contractors Association. I want to welcome you and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule today to attend this webinar sponsored by Ardex Americas. Before I introduce today's speaker, I want to remind you that during the webinar, you will be muted. Please use the questions area on your computer to type in your questions, and we'll answer as many, if not all, at the end of this presentation. If the audio on your computer is poor, please call the number on the invite to this webinar and listen on your phone. All NTCA webinars are available to watch at any time on the NTCA YouTube channel, and the current one will be up shortly by Thursday, and this gives you really easy access to watch and or share all current and past programs at your convenience. Okay, I'm happy to introduce today's speaker. This isn't his first time here, and some of you will recognize him. William White is an industry veteran of 30 years working in the tile and stone installation as well as slab stone fabrication and installation. William started his career with Ardex over 10 years ago and has held several different positions throughout his tenure with Ardex. His current position is the field marketing specialist covering the Western US and assists on several internal teams. William is passionate about the tile industry and education. He is a committee member and a NCCER certified instructor for Columbia Tile Trades Joint Apprenticeship Training Committee. William passed his certified tile installation certification in 2015 and supports the National Tile Contractors Association as a state ambassador since 2017. Additionally, William has contributed on the ANSI subcommittee for updating ANSI A108.1 Section 5 standards. Will, that's a lot you're working on, a lot you're doing. We look forward to your presentation today. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good day, depending on where you're at. Here on the West Coast, it's still morning for us. Jim, thank you for that amazing introduction. As Jim mentioned, please use the chat function for any questions that pop up. You can post a question on there. At the end of the presentation, we should have plenty of time to answer those questions. So we will dive into our presentation here. So when I got my start in our industry, tiles were much smaller. I can remember our first 13 by 13 floor tile project, and we thought the designer and the owner were out of their minds with these big tiles. Back then, all tiles were much smaller than we typically see today. The trend is to bigger and bigger tiles. We commonly see, 24 by 24, 24 by 20, or 24 by 48, all the way up to these 5 foot by 12 foot and beyond. Additionally, tiles are getting much thinner. As technology has improved, the prints are more realistic and the tiles, again, are getting much bigger. As these tiles are getting bigger, the need for a flat substrate is even more crucial. Recently, I dropped by an NTCA workshop where they were working with huge art glass panels. Imagine just how flat that substrate needs to be. So our standards tell us that we need a substrate 1/4 inch in 10 feet, and with any tiles with an edge greater than 15 inches, which qualifies them as a large format, we need our substrate to be an 1/8 inch in 10 feet. So this is referring to how flat our substrate is for both floors as well as walls. The reason designers and owners are going with these bigger tiles, it's really easy because it's less grout, meaning less maintenance, as well as simply looking amazing. This is an example of typical construction where substrate tolerances may not meet the need of the floor covering to be installed. We may laugh at this photo at saying that it's an extreme example. In reality, almost all substrates are going to need some sort of prep. By following proper prep guidelines, you will maximize long-term performance while reducing installation costs. More importantly, you will minimize costly callbacks and enhance your reputation as a quality installer. Because we've actually done proper prep, we aren't picking up and adding just a little more mud. We're able to spread our mortar and set tile. Preparation reduces perspiration. Here we have the 5 keys to successful installation, which are all critical. As number 2 reads, substrate preparation. The ANSI 108.01 general requirements state the substrate should be clean, structurally sound, and solidly bonded, free of any bond breakers, sealers, curing compounds, form release, flat and smooth, and free of excess movement. We need to get to a clean, sound, solid substrate. Any loose, weak, or material in the soft top layer will need to be removed. The most effective way to achieve this is by mechanical means, such as shot blasting, grinding, etc. In locations where we have contaminants, we must always remove these contaminants, such as release agents from, say, tilt-up construction, paint, overspray from the painters, drywall mud and compound that gets dropped on the floor, sweeping compounds, even any oil or grease. Say that the fire control guys were in there and they were running their pipe threader and it dripped a bunch of grease all over the ground, and oil, as well as asphalt and tar. In situations with new concrete, it should be wet or moist cured with no curing compounds used. We want to remove any surface contaminants, and a primer will be needed as necessary. So if the concrete is treated with a sealer, we must be able to determine what type was used. If it's an acrylic or epoxy sealer, we may just need to remove superficial contaminants and then prime as necessary. If it's a urethane type sealer, we will need to remove it down to clean absorbent concrete and then prime as necessary. The issue with sweeping compounds is that they are typically petroleum-based and or contain wax, which can leave a residue that is then a potential bond breaker. Preparing a substrate that has existing adhesive residue. For example, say there was a different flooring that was then removed and it left some of its glue behind. When we're directly on concrete, we need to scrape this adhesive down to a very thin layer without any excessive buildup. So we do not want any adhesive removers. The issue with most adhesive removers is that they can penetrate down into that substrate and create contamination and bonding issues. If you think about it for a second, if they soak down into the substrate and then eventually migrate back up to the surface, they will continue to do their job, right? They're an adhesive remover. They'll continue to dissolve and affect that, our bonding primer that's used. Sometimes an overlooked part of proper prep is to repair existing cracks. Products like this two-part polyurethane repair compound, which are extremely fluid or have a low viscosity, allow for them to flow deeply into the cracks. Crack repairs are incredibly fast. A product like this is done in as little as 10 to 15 minutes. The application of both pourable underlayment and trowel grade underlayment products are not designed as a structural repair. These materials are surface repair products that prepare the substrate for the installation of finished flooring. Remember our ANSI 108.01 general requirements. We need to ensure that what we start with is clean, sound, and solid, free of excess movement. So self-leveling underlayment, or SLU, has a new name. The new term is Flowable Hydraulic Cement Underlayment. So that is per the ANSI 118.16 standard. For this presentation, we'll be referring to it as FHCU, pourable underlayment, or simply underlayment. The reason being, these type of underlayments, they're not really self-leveling. They need to be moved around. They need to be worked at least a little bit for them to be able to do their magic. So flowable hydraulic cement underlayment versus a trowel applied or screeded patch. Several factors such as substrate, area of use, depth of repair are just a few of the considerations when selecting a trowel applied repair or an underlayment. There may be times when minor corrections can be made with a trowelable patch or even a ramping mortar, such as spalls in concrete, smoothing out existing tile, or addressing the seams in a wood substrate. Other times, we may need to create a ramp, like a doorway going from an existing elevation, possibly going either up or down from there. Here we have a fireplace hearth that was in really rough shape. A pre-tile repair mortar was used to smooth the surface so the finished tile would then be flush with that of the hardwood. Here's another fireplace where a pre-tile repair mortar was used. In an application like this, fireplaces need to be plumb and square. In this case, the tile was going to be highly reflective and required a truly flat substrate. I mean, look at that reflection of the doorway in the tile work. It's a perfect mirror. When we have a wood substrate, many times it's necessary to fill the seams and any voids with a trowel applied patch to prepare it for the underlayment. Why prime? Primers do several things for us, such as prevent the substrate from pulling the moisture out of our pourable underlayment, also extending the working times, as well as allowing thinner pores. Additionally, they create a better bond to our substrate. Let's talk about that a little bit more. When we are pouring over certain substrates, they can be overly porous, like gypcrete or even wood. Priming will aid the underlayment in bonding to these surfaces, while at the same time allowing the underlayment to flow rather than get hung up or caught on that substrate. In reality, I really like this photo because, he's using a broom to scrub primer into the substrate, which really drives the primer down into the pores and nooks and crannies of that surface. Here they're using a flowable hydraulic cement underlayment directly over existing tile. In certain applications, this is perfectly acceptable with the right primer and right underlayment. This can reduce tear out and downtime due to demo. Flowable hydraulic cement underlayments are blended polymer modified cements with high flow characteristics. Primers are typically single component acrylic or even epoxy. Keep in mind, most underlayments will require substrate priming. Pourable underlayments may be approved directly over wood substrates, metal substrates, and/or concrete. Always be sure to confirm with the manufacturer's technical data information. Do you need flat and smooth? Or do you need level? Sometimes level may not be realistic with the thresholds of doorways, etc. So here we have a perfectly level surface, which is going to put us at least an inch off the substrate. In most cases, level isn't necessary. We're just looking for flat and smooth. So how do we know how much underlayment is needed? Minor corrections may only require an 1/8 inch to a 1/4 inch. Rougher substrates and extremely out of level applications may require, 1/2 inch all the way up to 1 1/4 inches. Larger areas with deeper pores like this may benefit from products with longer open time and better heal between pores. These can be more forgiving in large areas and regardless of whether they're receiving large tiles or small. Think about that. Small tiles can telegraph improper substrate as they, if you see it rolling and just following that substrate below. Flowable hydraulic cement underlayment for tile and stone installations can help save time and money by speeding up the installation and minimizing effort. On a perfect substrate, we're simply able to trowel out our mortar and set our tile. High flow underlayments allow material to go thinner and smoother, requiring less work. Heal is the ability of one batch or pour to then be blended into the next batch, or even to fill in from walking across the material. Typically, we are going to wear cleats or spikes, such as photoed here. Even with complicated situations like with multiple rooms, they can all be tied together and be poured perfectly smooth. I mean, who wouldn't want to set on that surface? It's super important to seal off all openings. We need to prevent any of the underlayment from flowing or escaping. This can waste material as well as cause serious damage. I have a story about Phoenix that I can share at the end of this presentation. Several options can be used to seal the wall to floor connections, as well as around any penetrations like pipes, toilet fan flanges, etc. Adhesive perimeter expansion tape or even sill foam from framing can be used, and some people like spray foam. Myself, I'm not a fan of spray foam because it can be messy. If you've ever used it, you definitely don't want to get any of it on you. Next, we have a couple of tools that are going to be used with these underlayments. A gauge rake is shown here and is a height adjustable tool that measures out a specific thickness of material. This can be set from heights from an 1/8 inch all the way up to 1 1/4 inches. Continuing on with our underlayment tools, we have the smoother and the spike roller. Both serve the same purpose, which is to break the surface tension of the underlayment. So while our pourable underlayment is very fluid, it's still a cement, which has more surface tension than even a drop of water. So breaking this surface tension allows the material to flow and even out. Underlayments all have a specific water requirement. We cannot guess or eyeball these measurements. The use of smart buckets save time by measuring the right amount of water, making every single batch exactly the same. As a quick note, the mixing attachment, or the whip as I like to call them, are very specific from the brand of the barrel, because that contour is designed to match of the mixing attachment, or the whip is designed to match that contour of the barrel. So be sure to use the same brand as the mixing barrel, and don't use like your regular like birdcage mortar mixer in there. It needs to match the barrel, and that also prevents any dry spots at the bottom. So using a pourable underlayment over electric radiant heat wires is faster, creating a beautifully smooth substrate and protecting the wires from any potential damage, like the electrician or painters with their ladders on top of it, or even just dropping tools walking across it. Pourable underlayments are also ideal for going over hydronic tubing, such as pictured here. Always be sure the underlayment is approved for this type of application. I can speak from experience that not all underlayments are. It's always best to check with the manufacturer or the TDS. When we have a flat substrate, we can simply trowel out our mortar and set our tile. Again, this is saving a huge amount of time during the installation and using less mortar. We aren't picking tiles up, making a mess just to add a little more mortar underneath the corner. Backer board may not be flat. It's required to be fastened down to the substrate and therefore follows any highs and lows in the substrate, in the framing. Also, the mesh tape can create additional buildup at all the seams that may telegraph through the tile installation. There are different pumping options available for underlayments. These are a couple examples. They're typically measured in how many bags per hour they can deliver, ranging from 200, 400, even close to 1,000 bags an hour. That could be up to 50,000 pounds of material per hour. Now that's of course hoping that you have all of that space open at once for the pump to run. So I laugh at this photos because it actually happened, but that's a story for another day. The point is, how many things can go wrong in this photo? Just like a job set, just like a job site, what could possibly go wrong? Here is a pourable underlayment that was installed over a thick layer of existing adhesive residue. This caused cracking and disbonding of the underlayment. This material was overwatered. The result can be a very weak and powdery top layer that we cannot bond to. Here is another example of overwatering. You can see just how soft that dried material is. This photo shows a total disaster. It could have been avoided. They did a poor job on their substrate prep and wasted a ton of time and money. So on that bottom photo there, I think I can count at least 4 reds underneath that tile. That means it's what, a ½ inch of buildup, and they left the horseshoes underneath the tile. Don't be that installer. Substrate prep is key to all tile and stone installations. There's always a right way solution. Stay in tune with industry trends and best practices. Be aware of inherent challenges. Use your resources, industry guides, manufacturer technical services, supply partners, even the NTCA trainings are a great resource. The best practice is to be disciplined. Oops. The best practice is to be disciplined. Use our industry standards as a guide and do the right thing every time. So I want to thank everyone for their time today. We'll now open it up for questions. And if we have time, I do have a story about that project in Phoenix as well.
So while our audience is thinking of questions and typing them in, let's go to that Phoenix what could go wrong story.
Okay. So you know I'm sure we've all heard horror stories of what happens when you don't properly seal up the perimeter. Well, this happened to be a project in Phoenix. It was a master bedroom. And they hauled all their stuff up. They primed their floor. They started mixing material and pouring it on the floor. And it just kind of seemed like it was seeking towards one corner, and they thought, oh, that's kind of weird, but maybe it's just a little low. They kept mixing up a little more and pouring it out there, and they were kind of working their way backwards, and all of a sudden the homeowner comes running up the stairs and she says, stop. You've got to stop. And they're like, no, we're almost done. Don't worry, we'll be wrapped up here. We'll be out of your hair in just a minute. She's like, no, it's leaking in the garage. And the installer's like, oh, okay, I'll just send one of my guys down there with a bucket, and we'll just put a bucket underneath there and we'll just catch the little leak. And she's like, no, I need you to come look right now. And they all drop what they're doing and they walk down to the garage. Well, I guess it's a thing in Phoenix because it's hot that people put ceiling fans in their garage. Well, the can light was leaking the self-leveler onto the ceiling fan that was then spinning and flying around the room, and parked in the garage was a convertible Porsche with the top down.
Oh.
So the moral of that story is always double check your prep before you do a pour and make sure you've got everything sealed up.
Well, I think I told you the story that happened here in Minnesota. One of the installers, it was back in the early days of starting self-leveling. And of course, he knew to dam up the edges, the doorways, the vents and everything. But one of the vents didn't get sealed very well. And about 12 bags of material went into this person's furnace. Oh. So just to tell you that probably wasn't as expensive as the car, but it was plenty expensive to.
It was still a mess.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, while you were telling that story, which it's amazing, everyone should be careful with it, but it's quite a product. The FHCU, and the new name is hard for us people that have been using self-leveling underlayment, SLU. It's a little bit of a change for us, but we'll get there. So
yep.
Our first question, and it's about prepping the plywood seams with a trowelable prep. Is it required to use a primer over the plywood since it's a porous substrate?
So that's going to depend on the trowelable patch that's being used. Now, typically, if the patch is approved for a wood substrate, some are only approved for concrete or such. But typically, if it is approved for wood, then it's designed to bond in most cases without it, but always certain to check whichever patch you're using.
Great. And I think the primer side of this is where a lot of questions come in. Our next one's the same, and it said that they've seen a lot of comments as prime as necessary. And besides product requirements, what are generally guidelines for when priming is necessary or recommended?
So I almost called it self-leveler because it just rolls off the tongue. Our pourable underlayments, most all pourable underlayments, I'm only aware of one in the entire market by all manufacturers. I'm only aware of like one that doesn't require a primer. So if you're using a pourable underlayment, you can almost say with a blanket statement that in all situations that is going to require a primer of some sort, depending, and then whatever the substrate is, kind of steers you towards which primer, whether it be like an acrylic primer or an epoxy primer, depending on what that substrate is.
So this question is from me. So is there a problem if you prime one that doesn't require a primer?
So sometimes no, and I know cases where the products have been used that don't require a primer, the one that I'm aware of, and in that situation, because of what we were going over top of, it was recommended to use the non-porous primer in that application because we were in a really, really tough situation. And the primer just added that much more insurance that we were going to get a really solid bond to the substrate when we were in a little bit of a questionable situation. So a lot of times that's where your manufacturer can definitely help you out, using your sales rep, maybe having them come out on the job site. If you're running into something that just seems a little bit weird or a little off the beaten path, or maybe you just don't know because you haven't done it a lot, get hold of your sales reps. That's what they're there to do, is to help you, go to your job sites and help you out.
I agree with that 100%. We always want to follow manufacturer's recommendation. And if you don't know what it is or something, I've seen where bags come in and they're a little bit damaged or something's happened to the print on it. Just call the distributor, get them in touch with the manufacturer, call the manufacturer yourself. You can get all the recommendations. So that's
Absolutely.
great. So what
Yep.
happens if someone was to use Aqua Defense? Whose product is Aqua Defense?
That's made by Mapei.
Okay. So my answer before I even give you the rest of this question is call Mapei and talk to them, right? All right.
Always
So,
call your manufacturer. Yep.
always call, So if you use Aqua Defense as a primer to prevent moisture coming from the slab, is this considered the right thing to do?
So some manufacturers do have products that can be used both as a moisture mitigation as well as a primer. Now it's now we're starting to split hairs here a little bit, because understanding that moisture mitigation and waterproofing are two different functions, right? Moisture mitigation stops water that's coming hydrostatically up through our substrate, up through our slab. And most waterproofing compounds, such as liquid applied waterproofing compounds, single pump components and such, are designed to stop topside waterproofing. So, if you're in a high moisture situation, that you have a moisture problem. Again, this is where you want to reach out to your manufacturer and see, is that product approved in that application? I do know that, sometimes liquid applied membranes can be used, as well as moisture mitigation products can be used as a dual function, also as the primer. But again, you just got to check, call your rep, call your manufacturer, do the due diligence and check. But there are situations where that can be used, yes.
Great. If pouring multiple lifts of FHCU,
Good job, Jim.
I'm working on it. Does
Yep.
it need to be primed between each pour?
That's a great question. And, we get into that. And, typically if we're getting into pours that are incredibly deep, sometimes you can change maybe the product and find a product that can be poured deeper. So that'll solve that problem. Typically, in most cases, if we're having to do multiple lifts, there's a couple caveats that come into play here. So first, we need to allow that pourable underlayment to dry completely, because if we are going to have to reprime it, we can't put the primer down while the product is still curing, while the product is still releasing moisture, because what'll happen is it'll actually affect that bond of the primer to the substrate. And so first we have to let it dry, and then yes, we would have to reprime it in most situations to be able to do our second lift or multiple lifts on top of that. Or like I said in the beginning, possibly changing products to a product that can be poured deeper in a single lift. So I've been on jobs where we've poured as thin as an 1/8 inch. I've been on jobs where we've poured as deep as 5 inches. So, if you have the right product, sometimes you can do it in a single lift. Obviously, if you have the manpower and the capability to deliver that much material that fast as well.
So another one of our attendees here said, shouldn't you always be able to see the recommendations on a manufacturer's bag? And I guess coming from distribution myself, I do know that sometimes things have rubbed against bags or something is spilled or whatever, and it's not always easy to read on a bag.
Sometimes,
But if you're getting multiple bags, you should be able to find one that does, or you can definitely even call your distributor, ask them to take a picture of it and send it to you, fax it to you or something on that. But it should be easy to get that information.
Yeah, also in this day and age where everyone has a smartphone in their back pocket, and most all the major manufacturers are going to have apps that make it, that information is literally at your fingertips, that you can go search out a data sheet, you can go to a manufacturer's website. I mean, you can find that information. It's all just at your fingertips.
So Chip just said that after he typed that in, we just said that. So that's okay. We're a little slow on our end here, so sorry about that. Can self-leveling be used in exterior applications?
Oh, so you're hearing me say this a lot, is always check with your manufacturer. So to my knowledge, not all pourable underlayments can be used exterior, because it's different conditions, different moisture, temperature extremes, all the different things that go into play in an exterior application. I know that, yes, we manufacture some that can, but not all of them do. So this again is where you're going to want to reach out to your manufacturer, reach out to your, sales rep or technical services, and just verify. Tell them, hey, I unfortunately I got this exterior, and I need to pour it. Or a lot of times with exterior work, maybe we don't always want it level. And that's where a ramping mortar comes in, because typical on an exterior, we do want a little tiny bit of slope so that water can then be shed off. Any rain or snow or anything like that can be directed away from the structure. So sometimes maybe self-leveling isn't the right answer. Maybe you actually want to use a pre-tile or ramping mortar in those applications as well.
Well, Will, that was great. And I want to tell everyone that's still here, tomorrow you'll get an email from me thanking you for attending. And if you have more questions, you can just respond to that email. And Will and I will definitely have an answer for you. I'll be in touch with Will. Oh, we have a few more questions coming in, Will. Do you have enough time?
Absolutely. What do you got?
All right, great. I may have missed this. If you've already described it, he's sorry, but when installing CBU as a substrate over a wood subfloor, is it a good idea to flatten the subfloor with a rapid setting patch material to fill any lows and use a sander to lower any high spots before the FHCU?
So the question kind of confuses me a little bit. So if we're using a cement backer unit, so typically that's what our thin set is meant to do underneath of the CBU, is to actually fill in any voids. The advantage of using a pourable underlayment is that you're able to do that in one step and actually get a truly flat substrate, so that you're not having to worry about those highs and lows that the backer board would then fall into. So
Okay.
depending on how extreme it was, if you're in a really tough situation, maybe backer board or uncoupling isn't the right answer. Maybe having a pourable underlayment is actually going to be easier and less work.
And it probably would come down to, how big is the dip? How high is the,
How big is the whole area? I mean, are we talking about 50, 60 square feet? Or are we talking about 1,000, 2,000, 5,000? I mean, there's That's what I love about our industry. No two jobs are exactly the same. So, we get to use our problem solving abilities on a daily basis and just kind of go through, okay, what's going to work in this situation. So there is no necessarily, bulletproof answer, silver bullet. We have to look at each case by case basis.
So when you have those kind of questions that aren't simple to answer, it is again really important to get a hold of your manufacturer. Very important. We keep saying that just because it's that important in our industry that, check with your manufacturer. They can give you every piece of information you need for sure. So,
And something else that I'll add on to that, Jim, is that, sometimes it's a really good idea to develop that relationship before you need it. It's a good idea to know who your reps are, whether you're going to industry events or whatnot, but to meet and make a relationship with your reps so that then when you're in a pinch, in a pickle, that you know who you're calling and they know who's calling them, so make that friendship, make that relationship first before you need it.
I agree completely. That's very important. You should definitely be working with a distributor that you're comfortable with, and then make sure that they know their materials and can help you in any way possible, for sure.
Absolutely.
So this next one, Will, I'm gonna just see if you can answer this. We're going into an installation question. It has to do with quarry tile. And if quarry tile's being installed and they want a base, like a base put around the wall.
Yep, base shoe. Yep.
But it's not level. Yeah, like a shoe base. It's not a level, and they're thinking it's going to be crooked. Would you recommend doing a self-level first for the whole thing, or are there shortcuts? Or
That's one of those, again, no two cases are exactly the same. I've seen it where you have quarry base with the attached, base that goes on the wall. That's one example. Another one is when you have maybe a wainscot through an entire room that's built up, and sometimes those will have a base piece of tile, then the field, then a chair rail and all that. And in situations like that where that things aren't going to line up, or sometimes there are the profiles that are meant as that that create that cove. In those situations, a lot of times, like if you use the cove profile, it's a stainless steel piece and it doesn't bend. So you absolutely need to have a flat substrate. Can you do that with a trowelable patch? Yes. Is it easier and faster with a self leveler? See, it slipped out of my mouth too. Absolutely easier, faster to do that with a pourable underlayment. Again, nothing is self-leveling.
Will, are you still there? Well, everyone, I want to thank you all for attending. We seem to have lost Will. I think we've got, let's see, do we have another question here? So we do have a question if there's multiple substrates like wood to concrete, and both need to be a uniform elevation. Again, I would talk to your manufacturer. I don't want to answer that, and we've lost Will here. So I want to thank everyone today for it. But again, tomorrow, when you receive my email thanking you for attending, please send your questions to me, and I'll make sure myself and Will get an answer to you. I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to actually listen and watch to today's webinar. It's the last one of 2023. We'll be back in 2024 with a whole lineup of more webinars. Please look for your invite. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.